All right, welcome back to the channel. Warhammer Man back in the studio, and today we're going to be continuing to work on our Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team Octarius box set terrain, and this is the Ork Shanty Town. This is the majority of the pieces that come in the set, and this is the second of our videos working on these. So if you did not see the previous video, highly recommend you go back and start with that one, as it's going to show you live in real time. We took about 2 hours to get to this point right here and get all this paint slang, and now we're going to continue on picking out some details and see how far we can get. If you're new to the channel, highly recommend that you like and subscribe, share it with your friends on social media or anywhere else that you're interested. But we basically do everything from, commission paint jobs to just regular tutorials on how to build, convert, magnetize, paint. Always list all of the paints used down in the video descriptions and the order and techniques used to put them on the models. Also like magnet sizes, different lights and stuff that we add to the terrain. If you ever have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below, or obviously if you have any feedback, more than happy to hear from you there. So let's go ahead and get started with this one. So we have our main pieces. We basically did like the rusted effect and added in some metals. Now we're going to add a little bit of color and some additional metallics. So today the main paints we'll be using, depending on how far we get, are going to be the hashut copper. That's our copper, obviously. And then we have kantor blue for our blue base. We have khorne red for our red base. And then for our white, we have corax white. Those all have nice coverage and are good strong colors. They're going to allow us to go in either direction, either darker with some washes or brighter with some highlights as well. And depending on how everything looks and how it's coming along, might do both depending on what we're doing. So the idea for this is we obviously can assemble this into one big building as we have here, or two separate buildings. So what I'm picturing is that I will do one half of the building with like the red icons for like the orc insignia, and then the other half with blue. And then that way, if they're broken apart, you can have like a blue side, red side. But when the building is assembled, you can have it look all red on one side or mix it up accordingly. Not a big deal. You could use whatever colors you want, yellow, red, blue, whatever orky stuff you like. But that's just how I decided to do it. So I think today let's get started with the copper, and we'll just sort of work out some of these other effects. And I'm using all Citadel Games Workshop paints, but I have put them in these dropper bottles just for convenience there. They just obviously squeeze out real nice, and then I can go ahead and seal them back up. I don't have to worry about like the crust in the edges drying up or anything like that. The real question here is, how much detail do we want to pick out? What parts are we specifically going to focus on? So I have already kind of considered a couple things, but haven't made up my mind on everything quite yet. And obviously you can do whatever you want, but I have just a cheap little brush right here. This is a number 3, and I'm just going to start picking out some of the details. So if we kind of take a look at our terrain piece, just to get a rough idea, I want to do like all the tanks, but I'm going to try to leave the straps this color, or depending if I mess some up or whatever, I might just come back and do them in with the steel. But I like the rusty iron kind of look on them. I'm going to do some of the various pipes as well with the copper color. I'll probably pick out some stuff with steel, a couple more little details. Go ahead and slide some of this back out of the way here. And I still have not gone through and glued these. I'll probably do like these with the copper, maybe just some other little details, and then I'll probably do like a couple of the like wires and stuff like that. Maybe like red and black for like positive and negative, assuming the orcs can tell the difference. So, and like I said, I haven't glued these yet. They get a pretty nice fit. So I'm just going to go ahead and pop them apart just to kind of get at some of these like inside details a little easier. So just get a little bit of the copper on our brush and just sort of start knocking these out. So again, I'm going to try to leave like the actual little straps unpainted, so they kind of have like a different color, as if like when they're mounted on here, they were mounted with a different type of metal. You could obviously go back and just pick them out if that's a little easier for you and not have to worry about them now. But I always prefer to do a better job in the beginning and have to come back and fix less things later on. So, and hopefully this copper is really going to set off the color. Now, most everything we've done so far has sort of been along that same palette. Obviously, we started off with our black base coat, and then we went with like a dark brown, and then we did our dry brush with a little bit lighter of a brown, the mournfang brown, and then from there we went with our Ryza rust, and we've just been getting like progressively lighter and lighter as we did like our metallics after that. But basically everything is either in like the metallic or like kind of like the brown family of paints. So as we kind of add in a couple more colors here, should help us to basically make everything stand out a little bit more. And then also as we kind of pick out these details as well, it's going to really bring this to life, as we don't have like that same kind of, when everything's kind of the same, it looks like monotonous and you don't see as much of the details. Things don't kind of jump out at you. But as you kind of paint more and more details, I think it makes it like a little more like kind of catchy to your eye, etc. So we can see that's obviously going to give it like a little bit extra brightness. We're going to work on like all these little details later on here, anything we want to pick out. But overall, just looking for basically like our tanks and stuff like that. So we've got just a little guy down here. I'm going to go ahead and paint, or that actually might be a fire extinguisher. So yeah, I think I'm going to actually do that one in red. Maybe I'll do just a couple of these little bits down here, or some of the pipes on some of the different things. We'll kind of see as we go. So I think I will go ahead and do these. And we're going to have 2 of each piece because of how this set comes for like the 2 big terrain pieces. So if you don't want them to look the same, we can do one way and the other way, so they don't have to look exactly the same. Or if when you're painting you miss a spot here or there, or miss a different item that you painted on one, it's not a big deal because, it's obviously orc stuff. So maybe the bits came from something different, or maybe the orcs just took better care of one thing than the other, etc. So, but overall, just looking for a little bit of extra detail, make everything look good, but really doesn't have to be perfect. And then when we're painting around like some of these like little edges where we want to make sure that we're not like going over onto the stuff or like down in the like cracks is perfectly, it's not that big a deal to kind of leave it, because whether we wash over top or not, the grime and the black of the base coat and everything underneath, the darker brown, is just going to kind of like help to offset any like mistakes we have if we just don't go overboard. So like when I'm painting some of these pipes that are like a little bit harder to get at, rather than going and covering like 100% of the pipe and everything being perfect, I'd rather cover like 90% of the pipe and just leave like the little bit that's around the edge, so that it leaves like a clean line. And then the spot I didn't paint is just going to be dark and kind of down in the shadows and away from sight. So it won't look like I missed a spot. It'll look more like there's like grime and grit like built up down in those spots. So. And like I always talk about, obviously this is our terrain. So we want it to look good. We want to definitely like take some time and put some effort into it, but we're not as concerned with everything being perfect as we are with like our traditional like models or like small details or something like that on a character or a vehicle, as people are much less likely to pick up a piece of terrain and really start looking down in the edges and in the cracks to see like how perfect everything looks. As we're with a model, everybody wants to pick up like your Guilliman or a Baden the Destroyer, or like, your Tau Commander or something like that, and see them up close. You don't really get that with the terrain. You just want to make sure it looks good overall. So we're going to let's do this light fixture kind of right here as well. And I may do like some OSL on these lights. I do like that they have like the power cords and like the, little, like, I guess like batteries hooked up to them. I think it's realistic to think, obviously, with orc technology and ingenuity, that they would have no problem having electricity. So we're just going to kind of pick out some of those random details. Maybe do like these little vent situations like this. Now, there's a couple ways we can do this. We can do that like actual vent itself and not do down in the holes, or we can do like the whole thing. So let's see how it looks when we finish off like the rim, and then maybe we'll just kind of pick out some of the details. sort of like just a little edge highlight down in there as opposed to just like painting everything. So the two options are obviously we could just completely cover this, including the dark that's already down in there, or we can just try to focus the paint on like our little edges, but not necessarily down in there. So, and if you start doing one and then it doesn't look good, you could just fill the whole thing in. So let's see if we can just kind of pick out like those little ridges that are down in there. And then depending how detailed we get with this copper, maybe we'll use like some nilvac oxide or whatever to kind of like weather the copper in a little different way than we did with our steel and everything. So, or our iron. So yeah, we can already see how those are kind of sticking out, giving it just a little extra bit of color. So we're just going to keep working on those and work our way around each piece, anything that we think would be that color. So I think here we got pretty good. Give it a flip over, and then obviously want to pay attention to not touch the stuff we just painted. So everything looks pretty good over here. Maybe pick out like some of these bits, like a little lighting on that. So maybe we'll paint that white and then use some contrast paints to have like that glowing, or the airbrush. Maybe pick out some of this stuff here, some of the little car parts a little brighter. But I think the main focus is going to be this tank and some of the bits coming off of it. So I'm not sure if I want to paint all these pipes the same color or do them different. So let's go ahead and start with the tank, and then we can kind of work our way around there. So. And you can see it's got all kinds of cool little dents and like damage to it. So when we do come in later on with like washes or some of that extra detail work, or do like some edge highlights on this copper, that's going to make for a super cool effect, as it'll make like some of those little spots stand out even more. And just like I was saying, we don't have to do an absolutely perfect job on coverage, over making mistakes and having to come back and fix them. We're going to focus on just getting like 90, 95% of the area painted, but we're going to try to avoid getting anything over on like the straps or any of those bits, so we don't have to come back through and fix stuff. Our goal obviously is to just do it right the first time and then not have to spend a bunch of time like correcting our mistakes later on. So yeah, we can see how bright that copper looks compared to everything else already. So the real question is, do we want all these pipes to be the same? So I think overall, I'm going to go ahead and do those pipes right now, and we'll see how everything looks. And again, I'm going to just kind of dodge the little bits of like repair or like mounting points where you have like sort of a different kind of metal over top of it, and then it'll look more like the copper was used from something else or put on here, and then like the little straps that are holding it on were made of like a different material or added on later, etc. So and I think that will help to like, if the whole thing is just copper everywhere all around, it's not going to look as authentic. But if we paint it up like a couple different spots and a couple different colors, it's going to look more realistic, I think. And that's kind of what we're going for here. So like I'm not going to worry about that little bit in between the top strap and that strap right there, but I'm going to go ahead and like just kind of paint down in this area right here. And again, I'm going to just try to avoid making mistakes as best I can, but I'm not worried about getting down in there, as much as I am just kind of getting good coverage where your eye's going to notice it. So, and we'll start off leaving the gauges unpainted, but maybe if I make some mistakes or I hit them, I'll go ahead and paint them. And of course I did right when I said that, so go ahead and paint around them. And I mean, this is such a cool set, and there's so much detail on these. I think the key is really going to be figuring out how much detail you want to pick out and then knowing when to just call it, because you could spend, an endless amount of time painting this stuff. There's so much freaking detail on it. Mad props to Games Workshop on that. I'm loving this Ork Shanty Town. Good technique when you're doing something like this is too, just kind of angle your brush. So instead of going straight on with it and having to do everything perfectly, you can just kind of like lay the brush over top of it and it's going to do like the work for you without having to be as precise. But again, if we miss little spots down in the corners or anything like that, I'm not as worried about it because I just don't think anybody's going to be getting like super close, making sure everything's perfect on our shanty town. But little bits like this, as long as we get a decent amount of coverage, I think when we come back through later on and do like a little wash or a little weathering, it should fix up any little mistakes that we make along the way. So, and you could probably do this 10 times faster with less precision and then just do a couple little touch ups later on. But just as a practice in general, I prefer to just do stuff right the first time and not have to come back through and fix it and do all kind of like touch ups and everything. It's much less important on terrain, I think, than actual models themselves. But I just, as a habit, don't like to have to repaint things. Yeah, that's looking super cool already. And I'm not quite getting as good of a coverage with this copper because I did water it down slightly to put it into the paint bottles because it was like super, super thick, as Games Workshop's paints typically are. I may have not shaken it up quite as good as I should have or watered it down just slightly too much. So, there's issue with any kind of coverage or anything. I can always do a second coat. But I find typically that having them just a little more watered down is ideal for me and not getting quite as good a coverage. And then if I have to do like touch ups or a second coat, that's fine. But typically, like our wash or highlights will take care of anything like that if we see some issues when we're laying down like the initial color. So just looking at some of the detail on this, it looks like there's like a little repair that was done on our tank here at some point in time. We'll go ahead and paint that all the same color. Such a cool set, though. I'm looking forward to playing the new Kill Team. If you've already played it, leave a comment down below what you think so far. I know like a lot of the rules changes, and I mean just in general, whenever anything is changed, I think there's always like sort of like a resistance to it. But then over time, that becomes the new norm or whatever. But I'm curious how people that have already played or read through all the rules or whatever like the changes so far. So if you read through the rules or you have any input or feedback on the changes so far, let me know. Also, what do you think of them releasing new kits in plastic? Two of my favorite kits of all time came out in plastic with this set, obviously. The Deathcore of Krieg models are absolutely phenomenal and previously were like Forge World models. So I'm not a huge fan of resin, and a lot of the Forge World kits look cool, but overall resin is a pain in the butt and also a lot less durable than plastic. I think you get a lot more breakages over time. It's a pain to have to like clear it, clean it, prep it, all that stuff, like reshape it. You got to pull out like the heat gun or whatever you use. It's obviously like very brittle. So overall, I try to avoid fine cast or forge rolled wherever I can. But those new models are absolutely phenomenal, and I'm looking forward to painting some of them up as well. So at some point in time, when I have an opportunity in between working on commissions, I will probably do a tutorial on the orcs and also the Krieg. And then for like the orcs, those commandos are some of my favorite models as well. The old commandos were awesome, but I think the new ones are even better. I love like the bomb squig and the little like commando grot ninja guy or whatever. Very cool. Very cool. And I noticed people were really enjoying that first one video from this series here. So, that's going to be obviously the quickest and most effective way to just get a bunch of paint down. And then I think after that, you can just kind of quit whenever you want. It's up to you how detailed you get at that point in time. The most important thing, obviously, is getting your set like tabletop ready. And then you can start playing your games. And then after that, you can add in as much or as little detail as you want, in my opinion, because you already have your set to where you can play on it. And that's really what the most important thing is, I think just having your stuff on the table painted to any standard is better than playing with like bare plastic. And if you have like some phenomenal kill team or 40k army or Sigmar army or Necromunda gang, whatever it is, but then all your terrain is still like bare plastic, it's just not getting across the same effect. Especially if you want to take some pictures, share with the community, etc. It's just not the same. Now, if you have just your basic terrain paint job done as well, it really takes everything to the next level. And let's be real, it just makes you look like you're just awesome at the hobby if you have everything all painted up and you're playing on it and having fun. And I think that motivates other people to do the same. So yeah, there's our tank all painted up with a nice little copper set. Looks good. I like it. I like how it turned out. It's definitely got like a little bit of that brightness to it. And then I think as we go through and kind of paint some other stuff as well, I'm going to leave the gauges and then I'm going to go ahead and paint them with like some kind of bright color so they look like they're glowing. And then we will just keep going from there. So we can just kind of stick this back on here. I think the real question is now, do I like how that came out? And I'm gonna do the next set the same way. So, and I do like how it came out, and I think I am gonna do the other one the same way too. So, we'll go ahead and paint this here. I think the most important thing, just pick a couple of different things, and then every time you have that thing, paint it a similar way, and then that way you have sort of like a method to the madness. Because if you just go through and start painting random stuff, metal or red or, whatever color you decide to add as like your accent colors, you're going to end up with basically just a little craziness. If you kind of decide ahead of time what materials you want to paint, like I picked these like little drain bits. We picked the metal for the different, the lead belcher for the different kinds of metal. It's going to make, I think, your life a little easier because you can just basically glance at it and oh, okay, I'm painting all these this way, painting all those that way. And then you don't have to decide on each little piece as you go. Okay, what should this color be? What should this piece be? And again, it's all personal preference. I think for most of this stuff too, if you decided you didn't like something, you could easily come back and paint over it. Now, the most important thing is it's going to be difficult, the more stuff we paint, to ever be able to get like that full on, like kind of rusty effect because we did so many different stages of like the rust and the dry brush and the browns and all that stuff. So, kind of less is more type situation, I think, is probably the better way to go. And again, we don't want the scenery to stand out too much. We're looking for just overall nice paint job on everything. And then like little bits of it to kind of stand out. So I'm going to do just a little bit of the edge around here. But again, I'm just going to be a little conservative. And anything I miss is just going to look like it's kind of dirty down in the cracks rather than, going overboard and getting the copper on spots where I don't want it to be. And then again, I'm just kind of paying attention to what I've already painted that's wet, so I don't like stick my finger in it as I'm kind of steadying this. And one technique I always use, I stick my pinky out and use that to steady my hand, and then it lets me paint like a little easier without making the mistakes. Now, assuming these pieces down here are also part of the copper, and those are like the mounting pieces that are attached to it, I'm going to go ahead and paint those in copper as well. So it looks like it's like screwed down here. And then just kind of looking over at this, do I want to pick out any of those? Well, I think these are going to be the power lines, so we'll leave them that color for the conduits, etc. We could do something like this drain right here if we want to do that one in copper. Obviously it looks like I missed one of these panels here. I did quite a few of those with the silver. So later on, maybe I'll go back and add that in copper or in silver. But for now, it looks pretty good. I'm going to just kind of set these off to the side. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the one that I already did again. So I'm obviously most familiar with what I just painted. Yeah, I maybe should have shaken that a little more before I got started. Looks like that's a little more of a even blend. I think that initial tank had some kind of like the liquid settled to the top. It wasn't quite mixed up perfectly, as where this one's like a nice even amount of pigment, so should coat just a little better. But again, by the time we do a little bit of wash over some of the metallics, the copper, etc., and maybe just some of that I can't remember what it's actually called, Nilnak oxide or whatever. You'll sort of get like that Statue of Liberty effect. Should look really good. Should look really good. But yeah, I'm definitely excited to play some Kill Team. I did like the previous iteration of Kill Team, but I think some of the arguments for what people didn't like about it were strong. You could definitely have like whole turns where nothing happened. You shot with like everything on your whole team, and you hit stuff and you wounded it, and then people made their armor saves, or you just didn't take anything out of action. The random game length was also something that I think made it a little more difficult. Now, obviously, the way I think about it is like, some SEAL team mission or something like that, or like Red Alert video game. You have like a certain timer that you got to run out. I like a little bit more structure to it, where it's like, okay, you have to survive for 10 minutes against like, horrible odds or something like that, or you have a certain amount of time to, destroy the objective before the game ends and they launch the missiles or rockets, whatever it is. So I kind of like the idea of having predetermined game length. But I'm also a little more of like strategic player. So the idea of knowing, okay, I'm gonna just hang tight for a little bit here, hold the line, and then at the last minute I will make a push to try to like take an objective. I think that works a little bit better. In my opinion, it's a little more player friendly or enjoyable. So I think I'm gonna like that they eliminated the random game lengths, and then also the like what I was saying about the injury rolls. I think that honestly, like there was different stages in 40K. I've played for literally like decades, so I've played all the different ways that they've had all the rule setups and everything, and I've had certain editions where it was almost impossible to kill stuff and like nothing would die. Like I mean, some of the previous editions, like before they added in command point rerolls and stuff like that, you might flub a big roll with a las cannon and that was it. You're not going to do any damage. And then when they added in like the command point rerolls and some of the stratagems and stuff like that, it really changed how the game worked, because you could rely on the damage output of important like rolls much more, obviously with like the reroll effect, or with stratagems that would let you do like exponentially more damage by like exploding sixes or mortal wounds or whatever. So in my opinion, there was definitely some, well, it's actually a fact. There was definitely a couple of editions where, you might be on turn 3 and nothing has even died yet. Because, everything has like 2 up, 3 up invulnerable saves and there's no rerolls. And then like later on in the editions, more recently, by adding in like the damage and making everything hit harder, I think they made it so there's a lot more like stuff dying. And then this most recent edition, ninth edition, is by far like the most powerful. Everything hits extremely hard and kills extremely hard. So I think that that makes the game more fun and also go faster, which are two important things. I mean, everybody plays war games because they like to kill stuff, or strategy, or both obviously. So if you go whole turns without killing anything, that's like unfulfilling, and you can't be as strategic if you just have like your whole army, and you don't have like the epic one unit saves the game or wins the game for you or holds an objective against like crazy odds, in the same way. So for me, I think the game becomes exponentially like cooler when you have those moments where there's like heroic moments or something like that. And then also the game obviously goes much, much faster once 75% of your army is destroyed. You could spend a little more time on each unit and think tactically about what you want to do with those units. But just the fact that you have far less models on the field by like turn 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever means that the game is going to go by faster. And I think part of the problem with the game for me is, you could play a game of 40K and let's be real, you could have a bad turn on turn 1, or maybe you have a good turn and, mess up your opponent's army really bad, and the chance of them winning if you destroyed like a couple key units is like extremely low. And now they have to either sit there and suffer through another like 4 hours of just getting their butt kicked, or quit. And it sucks when right off the bat you've lost the game, or right off the bat you're just destroying your opponent and you're enjoying it but they're not having fun. I think it's better if both players are having fun like the whole game, and there's always like some kind of chance of winning, or even if you feel like you can't win, but at least the game is still going to be fun. So for me, I think if a game is really, really long, you basically suffer through like 3 or 4 hours of a beatdown, or your opponent suffers through a long period of a beatdown. That's not going to be fun over time, especially if it happens over and over again because your army is not great, or the units you've bought and painted up got nerfed, or whatever the situation is. So in my opinion, if you have games be shorter, and then, maybe you get your butt kicked, your opponent beats you, and then you run it back. I think that makes for a lot more fun. Or if the game, if the game goes all day, that's not an opportunity. But if it's a shorter game, you can run it back maybe in the same day. Or if you enter into a tournament, maybe you can get 3 or 4 rounds in a single day at some big tournament versus, you play like 2 games and only get to turn 3 and then the clock runs out. But again, that's just my opinion. I've played since the Rogue Trader days, and I've seen all the different editions, all the different changes. I like a lot of the changes overall. I appreciate that sometimes, the changes are what I like, and then sometimes in additions, some of the changes are a little less favorable for my playing style or my preference, and I'm okay with that. I understand, there's tons of people out there that like different stuff. I think the most important thing, though, is that the game is like doable in a realistic amount of time, and that everybody has fun. I think with those two factors, the game is exponentially better. If it's, reasonably fast and fun, I think people are gonna, you're gonna attract new players and keep old players, etc. As where if the game is just ridiculously long and you constantly run out of time, or like I said, you get beat down real bad and then you got to suffer through the rest, it maybe leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Maybe you don't want to play against a certain faction that seems a little overpowered because you got to suffer through it. Or maybe you just quit the game and go play something else, and that's not good for you as a player. It's also not good for the company. So there's definitely like a fine line between having a good rule set and cool models, and then also business. And I feel like with Games Workshop, they've been having a little trouble lately. Obviously, it's crazy times right now for any business, and there's like transportation issues and supply shortages and all kind of stuff that you got to overcome on top of the fact that they're like growing at an exponential rate. There's like all this extra demand for models because people were like locked at home and doing more hobbying and not getting to play as much or go out as much or do real life stuff. So there's definitely a lot of external factors, but then also it seems like they're dropping the ball on a lot of the other stuff. I mean, having like super limited releases and then leaving a bad taste in people's mouths because they can't get like the items they want or the models they want, uh, you know, or having situations where they're, basically like dead air on a situation. Like, I mean, I still think that the Warhammer Quest situation, Cursed City, was just a horrible, horrible mistake. And the fact of the matter is, now looking back at it in hindsight, they never really addressed the community. They never addressed the issue. They just deleted posts offline or like off the internet and just hoped that everybody forgot about it. And in many ways they did. And a lot of the problem is that people didn't want to have to overpay to buy from like a third party or whatever, or it sold out and they didn't have an opportunity to get it. But I mean, the truth is, I see on eBay periodically, not all the time, not every day, but you can almost always find the Cursed City set for basically retail online. If you just do a little looking and keep checking back, I constantly see people that have bought Cursed City, never opened it, and then they're selling it to buy something, probably buy something else. Some new release came out that they like better, and they never even played Cursed City. So, I think GW created a lot of artificial demand with it, and then it sold out. A lot of people picked it up, ended up never even playing it for whatever reason, or picked it up because they thought it was going to be worth money and they could sell it for more later on, whatever the situation. But eventually that stuff ends up back on the market. But by then, I think a lot of people had like a bad taste in their mouth, or, are mad at Games Workshop, or maybe they left to go play other games, and that's not good for obviously the hobby. It's also not good for the business. If you have demand for something and people want to buy it and you're not able to meet that demand, obviously that's not good because that's money out of your pocket. But, they've tried obviously to address some of those issues. They are a publicly traded company. So, the number one priority is obviously shareholder value. So they're not going to like come out and say, oh, we're having supply chain issues and that's why we can't meet demand, whatever, because that's going to basically have potentially negative effect on their stock. So they would rather just be quiet about it and not shoot themselves in the foot, not hurt their stock, etc. So I kind of understand where they're coming from with some of that stuff. But at the same time, what's the point of having this big online community and online presence and then not even letting people know what the deal is? Like, I would have appreciated if they just said, hey, we had some issues with our setup. We were planning on this being like a supported game as we previously like discussed or, gave the impression of, and something went wrong. And unfortunately, it's going to be, probably another year or whatever before we can get manufacturing picked back up or corrected or, whatever the issue is. So that's the deal. And then I think people can make more of an educated decision based on that. Because, what if you bought it expecting there's going to be all these like expansions and it's going to be supported, and then next thing you know, the game comes out, there's a big mystery about like what went wrong, obviously something, and then all of a sudden GW's like deleting it off their website, deleting all the like comments and threads that they made in the past. And now, there's all this speculation like, whoa, what happened? Are there going to be expansions? Is this game going to be supported? Is there going to be like FAQs to fix issues in it? Like, I don't know. I don't like the way that they handled it. But at the same time, because it is a publicly traded company, I understand why they've chosen to go certain routes that they did. But, I think overall it's not good. And then, they've dropped the ball in so many different ways too. Not to like rag on them bad, but I mean, they were so far off on the demand for that game. And then you look at something like Indomitus. you know, it was sold out like right away, and then people were salty, so they did like a made to order for that. And then look at the Dominion set for Sigmar. You know, they were talking about that. I remember they were like nonstop sending out emails to me like, get it before it's gone, last chance to buy, you know, limited number, limited quantity, you know, whatever, all this like spam nonstop. You know, so you get these like limited edition counters, or you could order it off their website, you know, only for a limited amount of time. And then you look on their website right now, it's still not even sold out. Here we are months later. I mean, it's been like 3 months or something like that since that came out, and it's still not even sold out. So how could they possibly be so wrong on how much demand they're going to have for different games? Like, they know Sigmar's not as popular. You know, I like that they offered with Kill Team, you know, the option to pre-order it, and then if the pre-order sold out, you could have the option to you know, buy made to order. So I do like that they did that. But at the same time, it's like, how can they not have any clue what the deal is? Like, I don't know. It blows my mind. And then you have like the Thousand Suns set that just came out against the Grey Knights. You know, that thing, literally, I was waiting in the queue to buy that, and it was sold out by the time I got my spot in the queue. And I was like waiting way ahead of time. So that literally wasn't even a possibility to buy. You know, and then turn around and Kill Team it sold out in a reasonable amount of time, but then they did have the made to order, but they went back and forth with that. Like, they had the made to order on there, and then that disappeared. It said sold out online, but it came back a couple times. You know, that's something that happened with the Beast Snagger boys too. You know, I was randomly just checking their site, and all of a sudden the Beast Snagger boys was available like 4 days after it had been sold out. So I actually was able to buy one set of the limited edition Beast Snagger boys, like a few days after it had already been sold out, after I waited in line and couldn't get it when they had the queue system in place. So whatever the situation is there, I don't know what that is. Apparently a couple boxes just showed up, or they had a couple more than they thought they were going to have, so they offered them up. I honestly have no idea. You know, also, like, their web store is completely inaccurate. When they post up, sometimes they will post up no longer available online. Sometimes they will post up temporarily out of stock. And that can be like extremely misleading too. Because if something says no longer available online, you start thinking, oh man, this might be discontinued. If I ever want this, I need to go out and pick it up from a third party. And then next thing you know, it comes back onto their website. As opposed to if something's just out of stock, you know, you can say like notify me by email once it's back in stock, and then I can always come back and buy it at a later date, and I'll actually get a notification. So, you know, I'm not just like all of a sudden, oh man, I missed it again. I don't know. They're definitely struggling. They're having some growing pains. Let's put it that way. Because they're having nonstop issues, and honestly, I think the community is getting more and more like sort of pissed. I know quite a few people that have either personally or, you know, from online, etc., that have basically just said, F it, I'm going to just go play a different game where they don't have all these issues. But at the same time, like, I just heard that, what's it called? Secret Weapon Studios is like going out of business. So, you know, obviously Games Workshop is booming and other places are shutting down. So they must be doing something right. All right, so I think that's it for all these bad boys. Yeah, it looks good. Could stick this. I just set it up there for a second because I kind of got like some copper on the bottom part. How does this one go? And once you have these like painted up, you really can't like see where it attaches and everything. There's like all these random little nubs you got to look out for. Oh, did I do that wrong? I think this helps. When I'm looking for where it actually attaches together, by just setting it down, it lines up like the height where it needs to be. So now we've got both those done. Looking pretty good. I like how they're looking. Can do a couple small pieces here next. Just gonna kind of do these events here. But we'll see. I think in time everything will be okay. I mean, there was like issues with Be'lakor when he first came out, and now you go on there, Be'lakor is back in stock all the time. You know, obviously like the Dominion set, they had a queue for that, expecting that to sell out, and boy were they wrong. I mean, it's still available on their site. And the crazy thing about Dominion is, you can actually go on eBay, and I saw copies of Dominion. I mean, I guess a lot of people like FOMO'd in to buy them. Like a lot of shops and stores or whatever bought large quantities of them because the MSRP on that was $200. And typically, I think for most people, US dollars, I think for most people, you can find somewhere online or local, depending on what your local shop does or whatever, where you can get like 20% off. I think is Games Workshop's like max you're allowed to have, or maybe 15% off. So, but overall, I think you can find pretty easily between 15 and 20% off. So that would put it at $160 USD. And I was on eBay the other day and I saw like multiple shops selling the set for like 140, 130, like quantity of like 10 or more. So if you're selling that thing, your typical shop is buying it at 45% off. So if they're paying 200 MSRP, they're getting it for 110. So if they're selling it for 130, which is the cheapest I saw on eBay, 110 plus shipping is probably going to be like, 10 to 20 bucks, depending where it's going to. So now you're looking at like 120 to 130. Or, I mean, if they're selling it for 130 rather, and they paid 110, they're making no money and they're just trying to get rid of it at that point in time. And then you have eBay fees, which basically like 12% on top of that. So if you're paying even, let's say if you're selling it for 130 and then you're paying 12% fees on top of that, that's like roughly another like $15, let's say. So at that point in time, 130 minus 15 is 115. Well, if they're getting it for 110 and then they're paying shipping on top of that too, it means they're basically like break even at best to like losing money. So like a lot of these stores, I guess, only have so much operating capital. So if they bought too many of these, assuming that they would sell out and they'd be able to like make a bunch of money on them or whatever, and then they're not able to, they just have to get rid of them at a loss or break even. That's absolutely crazy. Like there's very few items I have ever seen for sale cheaper than 20% off MSRP, and the Dominion set is one of those specifically. And if you don't believe me, go look for yourself because you can still find them. I literally just saw it the other day for that price, and I paid more than that, and I bought a few Dominion sets. I love the models. I think they're amazing. And honestly, if you were looking to get into Sigmar to play either of those armies, like the new Oryx are absolutely awesome, or obviously the Stormcast models are absolutely awesome. But you can't beat that value, especially if you're getting it like well under MSRP. I mean, the amount of models that you get in that set, if you're paying with tax or whatever, like, 140 to 150 bucks, it's basically like two massive start collectings for 75 bucks a piece. Plus the rule book in there. Plus, I mean, you just can't beat that, in my opinion. And maybe that'll help to like springboard Sigmar to be a little more popular. I think if the price point was a little cheaper, because I think that's definitely some of the issue is back in the day, I think fantasy was, I don't want to say it was as popular as 40K. I think 40K has always been the bread and butter. It's always been about like the Space Marine and the Xenos. But, Warhammer Fantasy back in the day was, at least around where we were at, very, very popular and very fun to play. And I think over time, fantasy, aka Sigmar, kind of died down a little bit, or at least like the excitement or demand behind it. Partially, I think probably because of like the rule set. And I think that's why they went towards like not having, like the square bases and not doing like I can't remember what it's called, like versus like the skirmish style. I think that's a lot more fun not playing with like the little movement trays and doing like the square regimental like units, etc. I'm sure there's some people who enjoy that, but overall, it's like the evolution, I think, of the actual game itself. But the models and like the lore and the fantasy and everything, like, I mean, it's obviously just as cool or just as, I can't say just as popular, I guess, But like, I don't know, I've gotten into D&D over like the last whatever year plus or whatever, and I love like the idea of Warhammer Fantasy or Age of Sigmar models for D&D, and been slowly just kind of painting them up like for myself personally, and you know, for once things are back to normal and we get to play in person. So, you know, I'm just as excited about Sigmar, maybe not the actual game, but the models and the line and everything. But obviously, I must be the only one because I can't believe. I mean, I think at one point in time on the website, I'm not sure if it's still there anymore, but it specifically said that there was like, I think 33,000 of the limited edition counter sets on the website. And if you bought basically Dominion from Games Workshop directly, that you would get one of those counter sets. And when you go on there now, they're still available. So that means that they didn't even sell. You know, now if somebody bought 10 copies, they would only get one counter set. So technically, you can't really accurately tell how many they've sold. But theoretically, you know, if everybody just bought one and then just placed another order to get another counter set with each one and just bought like 10 individually, you could say theoretically that Games Workshop hasn't even sold, you know, 33,000 directly. And like they were telling our store when they ordered that it was going to be like 3 waves of Dominion coming out. They would have like, you know, if your store was allowed to get, let's say, you know, 25 copies, that they were going to send, you know, 10 copies first, and then another 10 copies a couple months later, and then 5 copies, like, you know, in the final shipment. And then instead, what actually happened was they just sent out like all 25 copies like instantly right off the bat. So they obviously had no idea what was going on with the supply and demand there. I don't know how they messed that up so bad. I don't know how they miscalculated it. Um, I think part of, and again, I've discussed this in some previous videos, part of Games Workshop's thing lately is they have noticed that stuff's selling out, obviously. There's no question in anyone's mind. They're selling out of stuff like crazy, especially like the limited like box sets, like the Grey Knights versus the Thousand Suns, etc. So what they've been doing, and Kill Team was another one where they were anticipating it potentially selling out. So what they've been doing is they've been offering like the 2-week pre-order period, and then in that time they'll have the stores tell them how many copies they want, and then everybody that buys online directly through Games Workshop will get their copy, obviously, and then whatever's left they will use to sell to the stores. And then they also have a good idea of, you know, what people want over time, etc., like the total demand. So, you know, they basically get to ask the community like, hey, you know, back this with your dollars, how many are you willing to buy? So I think what's happening is, or I know what's happening is, from a business standpoint, you know, they figure, well, if we sell direct to customer and we sell one of these box sets for $200 versus if somebody comes on and buys this box set through a third party, or through like, you know, one of our retail stores, we're selling it to the retail store and we're only getting $110. So let's say their cost of goods sold is roughly, you know, development, like transport, all that stuff. Let's say their cost of goods sold for a box that's $200 is actually 50. Well, if they're selling it for 110 because that's what they give it to the retail store for, you know, they're only making $60 on that, which is on a $50 investment. So they're basically making 100% profit, as opposed to if they sell it on their website direct to customer, you know, they may have to screw over like the middleman, the retailers, but instead of selling it for $110 to another store that's going to resell it for $200, they sell it straight up for $200. They give free shipping, but charge tax on top of it. So when it's all said and done, they make, you know, their 50 is cost of goods sold roughly, and then they make 150. So they make 300% profit as opposed to like 120% profit. So it's exponentially more beneficial to them to basically screw over retail stores, sell as much product as they can direct online, and then whatever's left they give to the retail. And that is not a sustainable business model over time, because eventually those retail stores are going to get pissed and drop your product line or stop selling it, or somehow they're going to vote with their dollars, like, so to speak. So while they're doing it now, I don't think it's a sustainable business model over time. And I think they're starting to realize, like, hey, we probably shouldn't like screw over all like our retail stores. Now, obviously, it's different because they have their own stores also. So, they'll make sure that actual like Games Workshop stores get something, but a third party retailer might get less or none of a product in some cases. As we're like actual Games Workshop brand store, they'll make sure that they get, whatever decent amount, through pre-orders to make sure they meet all the pre-orders, or, whatever demand. So, there's definitely some practices that you have to understand from Games Workshop's perspective. You don't have to agree with it, but it makes sense to like understand why they're doing stuff. But at the same time, there are external factors right now going on, in the world, and you're seeing it obviously at grocery stores with meat, depending on where you live, or various products, where they're out of them for weeks or months, or stop carrying it altogether. So, there's definitely arguments for all the different things. And I'm not trying to defend GW for doing that type of stuff. But at the same time, I think it is important to understand from a business perspective why they're doing some of that stuff as well. So, but yeah, there's plenty of talk about that. And, if you have a different opinion or you've experienced something different, I'm curious to hear. I have, obviously, this community is everywhere, primarily United States, but all over. We have like people from Australia and New Zealand, obviously people from England, anybody that speaks English, but in different areas. I've had people from like, I think Spain, Netherlands, all kind of different stuff. So I am curious what you've been experiencing, or what your opinions or feedback is on some of these like methods. Have you quit playing Warhammer? Probably not if you're still here now, but have you branched out and started playing some other games because of some of these issues? Have you thought about quitting Warhammer? If they keep this up, are you going to? I'm just curious what other people's feedback or opinions are. Like for me, I'm an adult. Obviously, my hobby has always been around Games Workshop. I think they have the best miniatures. I think the game set and rule set is very fun. So, I'm all about that. Um, so, I'm not going anywhere. There's not much they could do to get rid of me if they wanted to. But, at the same time, I also have, the studio, the business, everything basically built around Games Workshop. So, while I have sometimes people will order commission sets for non-GW models, like third-party stuff or whatever, I have had that in the past, but 99% of, my business and my hobby is GW stuff. So I'm not going anywhere, but I can understand for some people that is not the case. And, if GW messes up too bad or pisses them off for too long, they'll just go somewhere else, play a different game, buy different models, whatever, 3D print, whatever the situation is. But, for me, I'm not going anywhere, but I do get aggravated sometimes with their poor decisions. But again, from a business standpoint, I also am probably a little more understanding than most people are, because I do understand like the inner workings of business. That's what I went to school for. I obviously run a successful business, deal with online, and I've had to deal with through this whole pandemic, the changes and stuff. I mean, when everything was shut down in the beginning, I basically saw prices start going through the roof through third party stuff. And I did not raise my prices at all because I didn't want to like exploit the situation. And, at one point in time, after GW had shut down all their stores and manufacturing and everything, and nobody knew how bad this was going to be, I had like other sellers trying to buy like mass quantities of my inventory because I still had stuff left. And I was having to like cancel orders because I knew it was like basically my competition was trying to like buy my stock so that they could just raise the prices and sell it. So I would have to like go through and cancel orders, and it wouldn't be like just one random person buying up like one squad or something like that. They would basically go through my store and basically like buy out 10 or 20 or like, all my stock of certain items. And I slowly saw like my stock dwindling while everybody else was raising their prices. And, it was a crazy situation. And then obviously, once it sort of normalized and opened back up and went back to normal, it was like, okay. But even now, a lot of my actual business is commissions. And even now, like I'll have like weeks and even like months go by when I have items on order from GW and they will not ship it. And I'm just wondering what the heck's going on. And then I have like time frame, from when basically somebody orders something through like the online store to when I'm supposed to have it finished, estimated times or, promised times or whatever. And sometimes I'll be down to like the last week or two and GW still hasn't even shipped the item. So then I have to buy from somebody else that has it in stock, get it shipped, and then rush to finish it real quick. And, that's not ideal for me. Like, I had some vigilator squads, like Sisters of Silence. I ordered 6 squads for a commission. Like, I mean, at this point in time, it's got to be like 3 or 4 months ago. And I still have only gotten 4 of the squads shipped out. Now, finally, they're shipping the second 2 squads. I believe they're on the way right now. But that is just absolutely crazy. And they've been in stock on Games Workshop's web store this entire time. So I don't know if they're just running low on stock. So they figure, oh, well, we'd rather just sell them directly. Or what the situation is so they can make more money. But it's absolutely crazy. Another one is like the Crimson Court, like the vampires. I ordered some of them personally, because I wanted to paint up those models. They were super cool. They were out of stock for a while. And, they've been back in stock on GW's website for weeks now. And they still haven't shipped them out yet. And it's like, what the heck is going on, GW? Like, it's absolutely crazy. And I mean, I lightweight suspect that what's going to end up happening is they'll go back out of stock online, and they would just never fill the order until later on. So I'll have to wonder now. It's like, oh, okay, did they just not ship them out so they could sell them full price on the web store? Is there just some sort of like, I don't know. I would think that they would fill all of the prior orders that they have first, and then whatever's left they would put on stock on their store. But instead, it seems like it's the other way around. If there's high demand for something, they'll put it on their store first. And then if it doesn't sell after a little while and they have more coming in or whatever, then they're like, okay, we'll go ahead and fill these orders. So, and again, that's, partially me giving my opinion, but also just what I've experienced. But definitely a strange situation going on. And hopefully it normalizes soon, but I suspect that's not going to be the case. As, now it's been like a year and a half, almost 2 years of this stuff going on. And while it's gotten better than the worst time, we're coming up now on, basically towards the end of the year, Christmas holiday, etc. So, it's still a few months out at this point in time, but, Christmas demand will probably start picking up. You got, typically like Black Friday, Thanksgiving time, you start seeing like demand picking up and Christmas shopping and everything. And in the meantime, I can't speak for everywhere, but, I've seen like crazy stuff online about like, 40 container ships, like just sitting outside like the coast of the United States, waiting to be like unloaded. And there's just not enough, basically like, there's not enough people at the ports to unload them. And then there's not enough like truckers to transport them around. So it's kind of crazy to think like, is any of that going to be fixed in the next couple months by Christmas? Probably not, because the demand's going to keep picking up. And, theoretically people will go back to work now that the government's not like paying everybody to stay home. But I don't know. We'll wait and see, I guess. And, in hindsight, maybe that would have been the way to go, to just like close down your store or quit your job or whatever and just get the easy money from the government. But I don't know. Who would have ever thought this was going to go on for this long? Who would have ever thought they would have like schools closed a year and a half later? I mean, it's absolutely nuts. Definitely the world is a crazy place right now. Good thing we're all living in a Mad Max simulation through Warhammer 40K. That's what it reminds me of. I'm like, oh man, we might be living in that Ork Shanty Town here pretty soon if things keep up like this. I mean, not really, but obviously, this kind of Mad Max situation all of a sudden doesn't seem quite as crazy. So let's take a look at what we got here so far. There was one thing I painted later on that I didn't on the first set. This little guy right here. All right, there we go. So I figured out the easiest way to attach these is to pop off the end, stick it on there first, and then put it flat on the table. Line this up, theoretically. Of course I say that. I mean, I must be the only one who struggles to put these things together. I know it's not that hard. There we go. All right. So we got all our little pieces of scatter terrain pretty well set. We've got, could do this little drain piece right here. Fits into our copper bits. Time-wise, we're just over an hour so far. So we're doing pretty nice there. Wasn't sure how long I would make this video or how long any of this would take. Obviously, like the detailed stuff, it seems like you're getting a lot less done, like volume-wise. But theoretically, it'll make the set look so much nicer. So I think we spent, well, I know we spent 2 hours in the initial video. I'm getting to where we were when we started today. And obviously very happy with how everything looked going into today. Excuse me. And then what if we put another 2 hours in today? Would be like basically 4 hours in on the set, and I would expect it to look pretty nice. I think when we get the colors on today, that's going to make a big difference too. So if I can get like the red and blue going, I'd be pretty happy with that today, which it shouldn't be an issue. I don't think that'll be a problem. So let's see on these ones. I think I'm going to do these like weird little vent bits right here with some copper. Those should look pretty cool. And then definitely going to do the manhole cover hatch thing. I like that. They look cool. With like the copper effect on them. And again, I'm just trying to focus on not making mistakes. Now, do we want to do the actual hatch itself? Yeah, I think I'm going to do all of it. That should have a cool effect when we put like that weathering on it with the nilnathak. I don't know what the lilac oxide. I have to actually look at that paint and see what the official name of it is. So I'm not just making stuff up every time. I kind of think of like that character from Diablo 2, Nilnathak or whatever. You like fight in the expansion. That's what it makes me think of. So we could do this grate right here if we wanted. I think I'm going to leave that one. So it's not like too much on this piece. I'm going to leave that one how it is. And then I am going to paint the bottom sides of them, even though no one will ever see these but me and you right now. Not going to spend too much time on them though, or worry about like the little details. Normally I would have dipped my brush in some water at some point in time, but I feel like now that this is mixed up pretty good and it's coating nicely, and I'm doing like this metallic over a dark color, I don't want to have like that watered down effect, um, so I can keep getting this good coverage. But I can definitely tell it's like getting a little like thick and chunky, but that's okay. Just gonna do a little quick touch around the rim. I'm not worried about it being perfect, especially because it's on the underside. And I'm just gonna kind of set it on there. And I was paying attention while I was painting that, not to be like touching the parts that I was painting. Um, so this grate right here, I'm gonna start with just that inside right there. This looked like another one of those copper tanks, but obviously after flipping it over on the inside, it's actually like not a tank in the same way. Maybe it was at one point in time, and now it's just part of the wall. So that makes me think. But I think I'm gonna stick with my initial, and I'm gonna still paint it copper. And then all the pipes like coming out of it. Maybe I'll do a little glow on these little like conduits here. That looks like obviously like a little power cord. I think overall though, yeah, I think I'm gonna do this one still copper. Right? How do I like that? Yeah, I think I will, because I'm gonna like the contrast of color. Because there's just so much of the iron looking like rustiness. Just gotta offset it a little bit so some of the details stand out. And then, when I set the whole thing up at the end and we kind of just look at it with some of these other colors added in, I think that's when we can really tell, like, okay, do we need more color? Do we need more, you know, different textures, etc.? Or are we getting like the effect we want? So I'm going to leave the straps once again, the like metal straps. I'm going to leave those. This looks like a little patch jobby. I think I'm going to go ahead and paint that the same color though. Yeah, I mean, the detail on this set is so freaking cool. When this is all said and done, it should come out really nice too. I'm definitely looking forward to it. Being able to do like some battle reports one day, hopefully. Been so busy though. I mean, that's one crazy thing. Like, I honestly very fortunate. But we've been just going nuts. We've had so many commissions this year. It's been like nonstop demand. And that's obviously very happy and great. For the store, for the business, etc. But it has really just completely eliminated the possibility of like battle reports, at least in the short term. Long term, definitely want to make our way more into like the content side and everything. But part of that is once everything's monetized and it's offering like an alternative stream of income, it's a lot easier to justify. As where now, the income comes from like the actual, the store and the commissions themselves, and then the content's just a bonus and a way to like interact with the community and share. And then also it's like cool little way to basically document all the cool stuff we've done, all the work we've done, etc. But obviously, paying the bills is more important than battle reports. But maybe one day we can pay the bills with battle reports. Or at least part of them. That is the goal. Yeah, so what I was talking about here is there's like metal panels that are like added on, like this panel right here and this panel right here. So that could like go either way. I think if I want to do those in copper or not, because they're sort of like patch jobbies later on, and I guess it could be patched with like a different material. I might be overthinking it a little bit. But we could overthink it together and then maybe it'll help you make up your mind when you're going to do yours. So let's see. Yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and do them all. I like the whole tank being like this copper color. And you can see, obviously, one of my just basic little techniques that I like to do is I always move what I'm painting and then keep my hand in the same spot. Makes it a lot more comfortable instead of like trying to do like awkward, crazy maneuvers with my hand. I have found that it's always just so much easier to just move what I'm painting to where it's convenient. Just a tiny little like tip or trick, sort of like the pinky trick. Pinky for stabilization, and then I move around whatever I'm painting for like convenience or to get to the right angle, whatever. The real question is, what about the pipes now? I am going to go ahead and do the pipes also in copper. Um, and it's going to probably look like a lot all at once now. But I think once we add in a little bit of the weathering and everything, I think it's going to look really cool. And maybe not. We can always come back through and paint them like silver if it's like too much later on. But I don't think it'll be an issue. I think by the time you look at the whole set, like when we're looking at just this little piece right here, it looks like there's like tons of copper and it's all copper. But when we put it next to the whole set, you have whole pieces where there's like no copper. So they'll kind of like offset and balance out. Just kind of smoothing out some of these little spots here. Making sure we got nice coverage. Yeah, that looks good. The weathering on copper is looks so freaking good too. Like this may look like a ton of copper right now, all grouped together like this. But once we get, that like kind of whatever bluish green kind of weathering on there and everything, and a little bit of wash down in some of the cracks, it really takes it to the next level. And then, if we do any kind of like little edge highlighting, which I probably will do just because there's really not a ton of copper. And, each step is progressively less work. So, like, it might take a bunch of work to do this. And then when we do, right over that one. When we do our next step and just do like a little washing on it or whatever, that's like a little less work. And then when we do our weathering, it's a little less work. And then by the time we get to like little highlights, there's like, it takes 2 seconds to just go through and highlight all the copper. And then the effect that it has on the whole set is just exponentially more beneficial. That was something on Gaz that looked really good. Is I took a little extra time painting Gaz School Thraka and did like some extra little like edge highlights and took each metallic with like a third color instead of just two on top of like the wash or whatever, and he just looks so phenomenal. Still not quite done, but he's like probably 90% done. I'll have to show him off in one video. And I magnetized mine for like easy painting and everything. Definitely should have demonstrated that in a video, as quite a few people asked. But in the end, once he's all stuck together, it doesn't matter anyway. But for the convenience of just being able to like pull him back apart while I was painting him, it was definitely worth it. So yeah, that looks pretty good. I think there's like a little cluster of junk down here. I'm going to go ahead and give that a little bit of copper too. And then we got the straps are pretty much, there's a couple little small errors on there, but not a big deal. Looks super bright when we look at it right now. And then maybe we'll just do on the bottom here two little spots to offset it. But then I'll have those be like lit up maybe. Um, like they're kind of glowing or something like that. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know what the heck that thing is. But yeah, that looks good. What do we got on this bad boy? The light for sure. Another one over here. All right. And could maybe do like some of the brighter steel on some of this stuff. Some of these little details come back in later. And then what about right here? This little tank. Oh yeah. Should look very cool. I can't wait to do like the blue and the red on this stuff. I think that's really going to take it to the next level. And then a little bit of the white for like the orc faces. Yeah, that looks good. Not a ton on this one. But see, that just makes up for how much there is on that end piece right there. How's that look as the set? Oh yeah, just one more little accent color. Definitely makes like those little bits stand out, but it's not like crazy, like overbearing or anything like that, I don't think. And obviously that's what I was saying about having one piece with like a ton of copper on it. Everything else has minimal. So having one piece like that end piece with a ton is not a big deal. And I definitely think after doing one of these, coming back and doing the second one is so much easier because you've already decided what's going to be what way. So that really is a lot of it, is just the decision what should be what color with something like this. It's not like painting a whole army of models where, everybody's armor, everybody's cloth, everybody's skin, should be like certain colors. With this, it's like literally a ton of junk just all hooked up together. You could paint it any way you want. Hardest part's deciding what goes which way. But yeah, definitely coming along nicely. And then like some of those last effects where we come through with the washes or like the weathering or anything like that, that really sets off like these large bits of all the same color because it breaks up like the monotony of that single color. Like stuff like this bit I'm doing right now where there's a bunch of just copper all in one spot. The little like oxide is really going to take that to the next level. And same with those big tanks. And then obviously any kind of like little edge highlights or anything we do on those other metallics, like either the straps around it or the actual copper itself, is really going to look awesome. Take it to the next level. Turn it up from 5 to 6 or 9 to 10. 9 to 10 sounds more dramatic. Yeah, very cool. I know there's been like a ton of controversy lately about Warhammer Plus. I'm not gonna lie too. Like I was thinking about getting it, debating it, trying to decide. I felt like it wasn't a bad deal. Um, I'm not really into like subscription services in the same way, but for us it was like $60 for the year, and I had some of those Games Workshop vouchers from when you bought through Games Workshop in like August. You had a certain amount of time to spend them. So I was like, I might as well use these vouchers and buy Warhammer Plus, and then I get that cool Vindicator Assassin model, a year from now or whatever. And I went to use them, and it wouldn't let me use the vouchers. So then I of course waited till the last day I had to use the vouchers. So then I was like, oh great. So now I'm not worried about Warhammer Plus, and I'm more worried about how I'm going to spend these vouchers. So by the time I spent the vouchers and got that all done, I ended up watching a couple of videos on Warhammer Plus, and man, everybody was just slamming it. I mean, they made it sound terrible. I figured like that Vindicator Assassin model, the one from Games Workshop, I feel like is like $35. And the whole year of Warhammer Plus is like 60. So it seemed like you were basically paying like an extra 25, $30 for the subscription after the model. So I was like, that doesn't seem like a bad deal. And then you think like, well, I gotta, it's on that giant base too. So it's basically like a little scenery piece and a model. So really the subscription is free at that point in time. And then I started like, I watched like maybe, I don't know if my like search results or Google or somebody was like watching me and decided it was going to show me like review videos, but conspiracy theory style. But once I was like looking at Warhammer Plus, all of a sudden like my feed on face or on YouTube was like showing me all these Warhammer Plus reviews, and man, I'm not gonna lie, they were all terrible. It was all just people ragging on them. And I mean, I get it's a brand new service, so maybe they don't have like a ton of like the painting tutorials or the cartoons or whatever animations yet. But it just seemed like everybody was ragging on it, and I ended up not getting it so far. Obviously, I still have plenty of time. Um, we'll see though. I really haven't made up my mind one way or the other, but overall, it seems like people are against it. I don't know if people are just grumpy, and I think in general people like to complain. So I don't know if that's the case or if it really is just like that terrible. But it was enough to make me think twice about it, honestly. Another thing is too, obviously, if you got if you pay for the subscription for a year and it's already paid for, and then they sent you the model right away, I think that, not that I'm going to paint the guy right away, but just feels like you're getting the guy right away, and that's better. I don't know if that's a big factor for people, for like normal people. I imagine most of us probably have a million models to paint, so we're not that worried about when we get it. But for some reason, not getting it for a year felt like, I don't know, it made me feel like I wasn't getting it. Obviously, I'm not for a year, but it's a promise that eventually you will get it. I don't know. I think that was maybe a factor too. But between the bad reviews from like literally everyone, between like the butthurt community comments like everywhere, and then also the fact that you don't even get the model right away, I was just like, meh, I'll just worry about it later on. And I think a lot of times when you launch a subscription service like that, the goal is to create demand or artificial demand so it looks like everybody wants it. So there's like the cost of acquiring a new customer, and then after that, most people will just, as long as the service is decent or whatever, they will remain customers or potentially like advertise for you over time. So I don't know if they should have made the model available right away, which obviously, maybe they just don't have those models produced yet, or they don't know how many they're going to need to produce or what kind of demand there's going to be. And if it's only going to be through that set, they don't want to just make too many and then later on come out and sell them, because then it's like they basically did you dirty because you were only supposed to be able to get it from Warhammer Plus. I honestly, I don't know what their rationale is, but I think that they should have either created more content and then launched, from what I hear from people, because I don't have it yet. But if they created more content and then launched it, I think there would be less community backlash from the lack of content. Or alternatively, they could just have the model available before they launch it. And then again, I think that would get rid of a lot of, the hesitancy, at least for someone like me. I can't speak for everyone, but if you have purchased it, I'm curious, what your opinion or feedback or whatever is. And then also, if you haven't purchased it, was not getting the model up front something that stopped you? If you got the model right away, versus having to wait an entire year, would you be more likely to sign up? Was the model a factor, or did that just feel like a bonus on top of it and $60 is too much? I'm curious about that, because I didn't think the price point was really bad. $60 for a year, what's that work out to? $5 a month or something like that. That doesn't seem bad to me. I think if you bought just 1 month, it was maybe like 10. I can't remember, honestly, when I looked at the site. Um, did the voucher situation affect anybody else? Like, were you in a situation where you had those vouchers too and you went to spend them? I mean, I imagine that was probably like just me, because I waited till the last minute and my vouchers were about to expire. So I had to like figure out how I was going to spend them quickly. And, I place basically weekly orders from GW. So I usually don't just have like a list of stuff that I want. It's probably already been ordered, or in my case, been on order for weeks or months already. Um, so I had already placed my weekly order, and then the vouchers were about to expire. So it was like, oh, what should I get? And then also, I get a better discount not ordering directly from Games Workshop. So that's obviously a factor as well. Um, but I'm curious, did that affect anyone else's decision making, or am I the only one? I'm really curious about what people think about it, what stopped them from doing it. It seems like there's like a movement for people that are just boycotting it because they don't like that they shut down a lot of other like independent people, which I see both sides of that. I mean, it's their IP, so they have the right to protect it. But at the same time, like for instance, let's use the Astartes as an example. If you ever watch the Astartes animations, they were absolutely phenomenal and arguably better than any animations GW had ever produced. So theoretically, if somebody else was doing something, that's your IP and doing it better than you've done it, what I would do is I would probably hire that person to work for me and then do that. I mean, those videos had like millions and millions of people who had watched them. It was obviously like awesome and the community loved it. So rather than like villainizing yourself by like shutting down all these people, you like hire these people, and then I think it makes others think, oh, that's awesome, how cool, like Astartes is coming to GW, it's official now. And then you start thinking like, oh, that's so cool, like if I just get good at it, maybe I could get a job at Games Workshop. And then it's like a good thing. But and I don't know, maybe that is a situation, maybe they did hire the animators, but I think it came off as like the way they handled it came off as negative, because they basically like put like a cease and desist out and say like, hey, you're stealing our IP, and you took our IP address, we have rights to it, so we're going to sue you. And then that comes off, I think, as negative. Well, it definitely comes off as negative. So I know a lot of people were like, whatever you want to call it, like boycotting because of that, or like mad because there was like these cool fan animations that got shut down. Again, I get both sides of it. Maybe it wasn't handled in the best way, but I think they definitely have a right to do that as a company. But is that something that affected you? Are you boycotting Warhammer Plus because they shut down like a cool fan animation site that you like to watch? Is that even a factor to you? I'm definitely curious about that as well. There's so much stuff going on right now, and like so many like keyboard warriors, and it's hard to tell. I don't spend a bunch of time on social media or anything, and I really just have Facebook as it. And I really don't even go on there, but I'm in a couple groups or whatever, and the quality of the groups over the last like year, especially, if not a couple years, has just gotten so terrible. Everyone, I think, that's why I don't like social media and spend a lot of time online, is it's just literally like negativity nonstop. And it's tough to tell, is it just a couple people that are always negative and just talking really loud, so it seems like everybody is mad? Or is that really just how like everyone feels and the whole world is really just like that negative? I can't tell for sure. And again, I don't spend much time on there, but partially just because of the negativity. So it's hard for me to gauge, is that really how people feel? Or is there just a couple people that are like yelling at the top of their lungs and everybody else is just like, yeah, I kind of agree, or yeah, I'm not worried about even voicing my opinion, etc. So I am curious if that is like the general consensus, or if it's just a couple people being really loud about how they feel. The internet's a weird place though. I mean, you could find tons and tons of awesome constructive stuff, like painting videos, like how to fix various things in your life that you would otherwise have to spend a bunch of money to fix or whatever. You can learn skills like anything from computer programming to painting skills to fixing your car, your washer dryer. Like there's so many constructive things, and it's like this amazing like unlimited vast tome of knowledge. But then there's also like a whole nother space that is just all negativity and just hate and complaining. And, it's hard to use one and not get caught up with the other. And that's the struggle that I go through. That's why I do not spend a ton of time on any of the social media or anything. I try not to even watch like too many like negative YouTube videos. But I have a couple of like channels that I really like and I watch and I love their content. Like I think Goobertown Hobbies is awesome. Brant, he's hilarious. I love that guy. And he'll occasionally, overall his content is very high quality obviously, but also like very positive, I think, in my opinion. And very unique as well. Like he did like the one where he painted up a bunch of Space Marines and then used them as fishing lures. I understand that was like not a hit for him, but I thought it was amazing. I watched the whole thing. I thought it was hilarious and very unique. And then also like he puts out some videos like he was talking about like an unboxing video and was like, hey, I think it was with Dominion. He's like, hey, I would love it. You know, it's cool that they send me this box ahead of time for free, but they send it to me like 2 days ahead of time. So I don't have a chance to like break it open and build it and paint stuff up and give like my honest opinion about it. And then, you know, I think a lot of other influencers did the same thing. And GW seems like they listened. They sent out a bunch of like the actual boxes for Kill Team and stuff like sooner, and then just told people, hey, don't talk about it until this date. You know, I've talked about Glass Half Dead on this channel before. He's another one of my favorites. I like his content. I like his personality. He's funny. And then obviously he's one of the few like exclusive like Kill Team type people. He specifically said like he got his first boxes from Games Workshop. He got them like well ahead of time and had the opportunity to like build them up and paint them. So it's obvious that GW is like listening to these content creators and the community feedback, at least to some degree. So I think giving constructive feedback is definitely useful, and can potentially change you know, how GW handles things in the future. Now, you're not always going to get your way. They're not always going to listen. It's not always going to be, you know, perceived as constructive or viable, even depending what the topic is, etc. But I think, you know, that type of feedback versus just like complaining on a forum or bitching or just like cussing GW out, like, you know, they literally don't even. If there's one thing I've noticed about social media and YouTube especially is if you're not giving people the ability to comment on your videos, it's because they're extremely negative, the comments that you're getting. So you don't want those extremely negative comments like infecting the comment space or the community or other people to read them and be like, yeah, that actually makes sense. In my opinion, that's why people turn off comments. And I have noticed that GW always has comments turned off on its videos. And then also, you know, it blows my mind because I have noticed too, when I go through and watch like their videos, the amount of dislikes to likes, like the ratio is just absolutely horrible. Like a video might have 300 likes and 700 dislikes. And like that blows my mind. Like that means that there's legitimately people that watch the videos, so they're interested in the topic. They're probably customers of GW's. They watch the videos and then just hate everything that they say or do. Like that blows my mind. So I don't know if that's like the masochist effect. Oh man, I didn't realize the light was like shining in off the window. Hopefully that didn't like mess up what you guys could see. But I don't know if people are just like naturally like masochistic and they just like torture themselves by like loving the product or playing the game or whatever, but then also like hating the company that makes it and disliking all their videos. I really don't know. But it blows my mind just how much negativity there is on their videos and the fact that they can't even have like comments turned on. Um, I don't know. Very strange. But I'm sure it's probably better that they're not turned on if that's an issue because they're probably terrible, horrible feedback. So how's everything looking here? Definitely coming along nicely. Let's see if we spin this around and look at it from a different angle. Actually, let me look at it. Yeah, that looks so cool. I really like how this copper is looking. Yeah, big fan of how that copper is looking so far. Definitely a big fan. And right back where we started. Oh, and these little panel pieces too, there's like little legs that go on them so that when you set them down in there, they have legs and they stand up on their own. I did not realize that. For some reason, I was thinking the little legs went on these planks, but I do have all that stuff. I haven't gotten around to painting that stuff up. I did not. I was limited on how much primer I had left, and also how much space I had in the little workroom because this took up a ton of space. So I did all this, and then I figured I would do the other stuff later, and I was kind of short on primer, so I have not done that yet. But overall, very cool. Definitely liking this so far. So let's see. We are at 1 minute and 44 or 1 hour and 44 minutes. So the real question is now, do we want to go another like 15 minutes and do some of the color as well? I really would like to. So let's go ahead and there's some fuel cans. There's some like random crashed like jets and cars and all that stuff as well. So I think I'm gonna go with the red first. So this is the khorne red. So it's a little darker of the base reds. The other one I use a lot is Mephiston red. Um, this is kind of more like almost like a maroon color, but I'm a big fan of this. So let's go ahead and start on this piece. See if we got to take it apart for this. So nothing on this. I want to do the skull. Oop, I forgot to do the eyes in there. Probably do the skulls in white. So I'll wait and come back to that. But I want to do like the fuel can in red, like a jerry can, and then around like the skulls in red. The real question is, do I want to do a purposely sloppy job so it looks like the paint has like rubbed off some of this stuff? Or do I want to do a nice coat first and then kind of weather it later? I was thinking about that earlier and, you know, didn't really make up my mind. But again, I do want to be really careful painting all this stuff because I don't want to get the red all over everything else. Definitely want to keep this as clean as possible. There's like little bullet holes in it. Yeah, very cool. And for this specifically, I want to make sure that this red is like in different places. I don't want too much all in one spot because I just want it to be like an accent color. So this is kind of what I was talking about here. Now I'm going to paint that orc skull in afterwards. So it's not a huge deal if I get a little bit of paint here or there, like in between, as I'm doing like some of these little details. If I get some on the actual skull, it's not that big of a deal because I'm painting over top. But that's why I paint basically from back to front. So, you know, I'm painting this and then the skull itself is going to be easier to paint. So I'm painting all the hard to paint stuff first and then I'm painting the raised up stuff afterwards. So that's sort of like how I paint like Space Marines and models and stuff like that. I paint like from their core, the hard to reach stuff first, and then I work my way out from that. So the last thing I paint is like the easy highlights and stuff like that. It's like clearly, you know, not going to have anything in my way to try to get to it. As where, you know, if I'm trying to paint like, you know, the center like core of a model, you know, I might bump my brush up against something else when I'm trying to get it in there. As where, you know, if I'm painting like a shoulder pad or a weapon or whatever that's like blatantly visible and easily accessible, I don't have to worry about that nearly as much. So, but again, just a little like hack technique that makes everything easier. So it's got a little like wear on it already. So let's see if I start just kind of adding in some of this paint and just make it look like I didn't, like it's kind of worn off around the edges. Let's see how this effect looks at first. And then I'll see if I like it, you know, just purposefully kind of missing little bits here and there. So it looks like it's like worn off. You know, obviously the harder to get to places like around the little bolts and stuff, the paint would still be there because it would be less likely to have worn off. But by like purposefully not painting all this, I kind of like leave the weathered effect a little bit. And then we can see how that looks because I think it'll probably look okay. I do it sometimes on vehicles like spaceship type stuff to make it look like it's like worn. And then obviously if we come back later and we do like a little bit of like some silver edge highlighting, it will like make those spots look shiny instead of worn. But yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Just skipping like the little edges. Definitely gives off like a little bit of that wear and tear the way we want it. So this one I'm going to do red as well. And then on the other ones I'm going to go ahead and do them in blue. So we'll have what amounts to like two separate like bases, a red base and a blue base. And then when they're all together, just one side will have the red stuff, the other side will have the blue stuff. Might be a little territorial and make somebody mad, but these orcs, they'll get over it. Yeah, the detail on this stuff is so great. Like all the little like wear and tear that they put into everything. I mean, just coming through afterwards and doing a little like dry brush highlight, I think would look awesome on this. Obviously, the metallics that we already did look really good. Now we're covering up a lot of that wear and tear, but by leaving some and then coming back and adding a little in later, I think it's going to look really good. And then this way, we'll still have a little bit of our rust effect like left behind in some spots. And then also like, it would make sense that when stuff's getting worn down, maybe like the rust is not what's showing through because the rust is showing through because the paint's wore off, but then also the rust is worn off as well. And then it's like, bright metal underneath, which makes sense, obviously, if you've ever seen like, the wear and tear that actually takes place like real life on stuff. And if you haven't, just look at like some old pictures online of like tractors or something like that that's like all worn out and you'll get like a feel for what I mean. But yeah, I think I like how that looks. See, so we have like the kind of silverware at the top, silverware, like the metallic wear at the top, and then kind of the rusty wear at the bottom. But it looks good. Don't think there was any on the insides or anything. Now, the real question is, do we want to do all the wires? Do we want to have one of each of those wires be red and the other one be black? Because that's what I was kind of thinking. And I kind of like the idea of that, like the power wires being the ground wire and the positive wire. So I think I am going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to have to be a little more careful here. I'm sure this is probably where I'm going to be messing up, but I think most people don't realize how much more difficult it is to, like when I'm holding this out here painting, it's like real far away from how close I would normally have it to my face. But the camera kind of takes where my head would be, takes up the spot, and then my head is like back an extra like foot or so. So basically what I'm saying is I'm sacrificing my quality and ability to see for you guys. So if there was ever a reason for you to smash the like button and share with your friends and subscribe to the channel, that's the reason. But again, I'm not worried about if it's like perfect because, there'll be like grit and grime down in there. So if maybe I miss a little spot, it just looks like it's dirty and not that I didn't paint it. So these are getting kind of twisted up here. Just got to make sure I keep painting the same one. And then this one. Then I'm skipping that little spot because that looks like it's like sort of like a metal fixture bit on each of them. And then there's a bunch in a row, so I'm skipping them because the metal fixture bit. And bear with me here. I'm gonna A little hard to reach spot there. And then it's curving back in. And I never would have noticed it if I wouldn't have just painted this. But it is the same one over here. Who'd have thunk it? Not me. Yeah, it looks cool. And then there's tons and tons of wires down here. Let's make sure we don't touch anything that matters. Tons and tons of wires like under here. The real question is just like how much do you want to paint? I'm going to go ahead and just do a couple. Not going to go like super crazy. Looks like again that wire leads over to this light over here. And then we got that light in the corner. Man, I might have to take this apart to get to that one. There we go. It's a little easier than pulling it back apart. Also, the camera that I use has like an auto zoom feature. And the problem with when I'm painting with the auto zoom, my hand sometimes will make it zoom in and like change focus all the time. And it's super annoying. So I turn that off for these videos. And then when I'm not, like if I'm doing some close ups and moving stuff around or whatever, I might leave it on or turn it on and off at times. And then just go through and edit it so it's not like zooming in and out all the time, bothering like the viewer. But when I do videos like this, I do it all with that off. Yeah, that little bit of color is really making it stand out now. So now I'm going to do this piece with the red also, and then I will do the other ones in blue. So we have one more of those panels right here, and then one more right here. And then there's some like lights and wiring and stuff on the inside. So, and then a big one here. Oh, so it looks like these are actually wires, but I painted them copper. So I'll probably paint over them. Yeah, they're definitely wires. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what power wires are going to this. Maybe for the gauges. But yeah, that was definitely a flub on my part. So paint one red and one black. Just so I remember, I'm just going to paint a little bit of it now. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the little orc face right here. And again, I'm not that worried about getting any on the actual face. More worried about just getting everything filled in where I want it to be blocked out in red. And then when I paint the white on over top. Not to mention, I feel like if there was ever a time where you could like not worry about the quality of your paint job as much, I feel like it would be on the orc terrain stuff. Because you got to figure it was an orc who painted this. So even if he was trying his hardest, which he probably wasn't, I'm not sure how great a job an orc is with a paintbrush. If he even cares. And again, I'm going to purposefully leave some little spots around the edges, not painted. Leave the rivets like unpainted so they still have like that little metallic that they picked up from the dry brush. And again, that's just personal preference because you could easily just add that in later and get like the same effect just by dry brushing or just like doing some little like edge painting or highlights or whatever. But I like the look of this and kind of looking like the paint has already been like kind of scratched off or worn off over time. Yeah, it looks cool. And then we got one more around this side here. Man, this terrain is so freaking cool. Gotta love it. I feel like if you were doing a Necromunda set and you didn't want like the orc stuff on here too, that it would be pretty easy to cover up, or whether you like actually took the time to like carve it off of here or you just covered it up with like some other bits from like extra Necromunda sets or like something that you 3D printed off. I think it would be pretty easy to like fully convert this so it didn't have any like orc iconography or badges on it. Now, me personally, I'm not that worried about it either way. If I'm going to use it for Necromunda or for Kill Team. But if you were going that route, I think you could easily use this for Necromunda with minimal effort too. There we go. All right, and then for these little wires here, so I went ahead and just painted a little bit of that wire so I could keep track of them now. So they don't switch colors when they go through the wall. Nice. Very cool. And then just going to be careful where I grab it for this right here. I don't think we had any low stuff. Yeah. Okay, so I want to do this wire for the light here. Trying to just dodge the little mounting brackets where applicable. And then we got like a little power line that goes right here. So we'll go ahead and do that one red as well. And it's not a big deal if they're red versus black. The black's obviously not going to show up as much for like the ground wire. Or maybe we'll do like blue just to keep with the color. But if you've ever like wired anything, typically the red will be the power wire and the black will be the ground wire. So that's why I was going to go that route. It's got like a little power going to this bad boy right here. And then it's like into an actual plug, which is pretty cool. So assuming that plug goes somewhere else there into the ground. And every little so often there's like another little like bracket mounting bit on here. So doing my best to dodge those. But I mean, realistically, if you make any mistakes along this process right here, we can just go through with a brush with a little bit of wash on it, and it will kind of fill in those cracks and cover up any mistakes we made. So there's a little panel back in there we could paint some power on, but I'm not that worried about it. I don't think you'll really ever get to see it either. So I'm going to leave that one alone. And then that's our red on those. Now, switching over to these now, I do want to go ahead and paint the power wires still, but I'm not going to paint the orc faces the same way. So let me see, just for convenience sake, how much easier it is and quicker to just do it this way. Yeah, I mean, it's so easy to take these apart and then it's not blocking my hand right here. Everything is flipped on the screen, but I'm a righty. So it looks like I'm using my left hand to paint, but I'm not. And I think that took me like a tenth of the time, and you see how easy it is to pop them apart. So just as a demonstration as to why I don't glue this stuff until the end, that gives you a pretty good reason right there, how much easier that made it. And then this power wire goes all the way over to there. I think I might have skipped this one on the other one. And you'll see I use the same paintbrush for everything so far today that we've done. And this is literally just one of those like cheap dollar paintbrushes. So if it wears out because of, metallics or, not putting enough water on it or treating it right, like throughout this phase, we basically used a dollar paintbrush, even if it's ruined, that painted this whole set up pretty much today. So it's not a bad deal. They come in like little packs. It's like basically like $5 for like 5 to 7 paintbrushes, depending which packs you get. You really just can't beat that, in my opinion, of course. So here we got the little wires come over the sides and they're actually broken off right here. Oh no, that must be where they connect. That's where they connect. So we know already on this one that this is that same wire that goes through here. So that one's going to be our power wire. And then those are the little couplers for the actual lights, little sockets. So we're going to skip over those. And then got the big wire right here. This goes to the door, so maybe we want to have one of the red wires go to that, or we can do like a blue or green or something else as like a third wire. We don't have to just do black and red. Sort of dodging those couplers as best we can, like the mounting brackets. And gonna need just a tad bit more red. Not gonna go too crazy because we're just about done with it. And just to make sure we paint the right one, so yeah, it's the thicker one that's on top right here is the red one. All right. And then we know it comes back through on this side. And that's that same red wire after it comes from our lights. You don't want to get all the way through and then not paint this wire and then none of the lights work because we didn't complete the circuit. It's obviously crucial. Attention to detail. And then this one got a wire coming from this. I could paint that one now that we know what's going on here. And just being careful not to touch what we just painted. There, we've got that bad boy. Okay, good. And we're skipping the orc faces, remember, on this one. Because we're going to come back and do those in the blue. And we'll do that next and then probably call it there. Maybe do the red on some of these. I think there was like a couple more ammo cans and like the crashed vehicle bits on the barricades. Some of those I was planning on doing in red. Go ahead and do this little guy right here while we're at it. That was the one we said we skipped on the last one. So, you know, it's not that important that they're exactly the same or that we do every little detail. The key is by just adding in a couple little details here that is going to make the whole set look better because it'll kind of catch your eye. But if we miss one here or there, not a big deal, and probably nobody's ever going to notice but us. And if it bothers you, you can go back and do the other one. Then we got up here on this bad boy. How do we do these? I don't remember now. That's this piece right here. So I can actually see where I missed this spot right there. There we go. So that is going to be this one. There we go. Then it crosses underneath here. And then we know that's going to be that one is this one. And if we get some on that other one, it's not a big deal because we're painting that one afterwards. I'm obviously getting a little sloppy on some of these now. But, I mean, we've been going for a while, so you can kind of tell sometimes towards the end when you're just, like, not as worried about the detail or whatever. Maybe your quality starts trailing off a little bit, or your patience. Probably about time to wrap it up, so. But we'll try to get a little bit more done here. Overall, looking good, though. Looking good. And then we're skipping all the faces. So that should be it for all the red on here. Now, this is the question here. Do I want to do this red and then the white skull right there? Or do I want to do it in a different color so it's neutral? I think I'm going to go ahead and do this in red. just because this piece is kind of plain and I don't want to spend too much time thinking about it. And because again, we're going to paint that face afterwards in white, I'm not as worried about it. But as I get towards the edges, I'm going to sort of skip some of the detail and make it look like it's kind of worn off there once again. And then I might come back with a slight little bit of metallics as well, like we were talking about. And I have the rest of this. Like there's a couple tanks that go with it and like the little action piece of like the oil miner. Now these pieces, the bottom here has like a couple teeth across that strap. Those will probably get painted white. But the actual metal straps, I want to kind of leave in like this iron color. I think I'll probably leave them that color when they're done. So it's better if I don't make any mistakes on them. If I can avoid it. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. And then we assume because this is on the top, that if the environment is what's wearing the paint off of this, that it would be more worn on the top here. So maybe I will intentionally leave a little more wear. Yeah, that looks cool. I like it. Well, it's around about 217 now, so definitely going a little longer on this one, but it's not bad. So same thing here. I'm going to just go around the bits I want, and then I'm just going to leave a little unpainted around the edges to simulate that wear and tear. Just watching where I put my pinky so I'm not all up on the spots I've already painted. And I'm just kind of like feathering the brush along to do that wear and tear. Kind of skipping the corners a little bit. So I turn my brush the direction I want the feathering to be in. And then I'm just kind of pushing it back and forth, letting it fill in where I want it and not, but letting it do just kind of its own little thing, a little randomness to it. And again, here, you know, with this stuff, nothing's going to look out of place. If we have a bunch of spots where it's like worn off or we didn't paint it, any spot that we like accidentally don't paint is just going to look like it was intentionally done. So we kind of give ourselves a little extra wiggle room on like the quality because we've intentionally missed some spots. So any spot that you see that's not painted or there's a mistake or whatever, looks like it was actually intentionally done. So we're kind of cheating. But there, you can see overall it's painted nicely. But then there's little spots where it's worn off, which is the effect we're going for. So great success. And then for little bits like this, you know, if we get it on those little rivets or whatever, we can do one of two things. You can either leave it that way, and it's like, you know, they were just painted over by the orc because they didn't care, or we can go back later and pick them out and do like just a little bit of detail work at the end. Either way is fine. But, you know, overall, the less we have to come back and do later, the better. So if you want them to be like metallic, especially the ones at the top where the dry brush picked up on them real nicely, we're going to try as best we can not to, you know, mess them up. So it's less we have to come back and do later. But if we do have to do a couple little spots, it's not a big deal. And again, we're painting the stuff that's in the back first. And then when we come back, it's easy to just dab a little bit of paint right on there. So we're painting from like the hard to reach stuff to the easy to reach stuff last. Paint the rivets first, then you got to worry about not messing them up now. If the rivets got painted and then we come and paint everything else around them and a couple get messed up, it's easy to just come back and fix our mistake later. So that's what I'm going for. That's the rationale behind it anyway. And then we got the little light there, so I'll probably do like some kind of OSL effect or something on that light and make it look like it's shining, like a blue or a yellow, either with the airbrush or just you know, you can do OSL pretty easily just with a paintbrush as well. I think it's simple with an airbrush, but if you know what you're doing, you can do some pretty cool OSL with you know, a regular paintbrush. And also I like to use the contrast paints. The yellow contrast paint or the green or blue contrast paint do really good like OSL as well. So we'll just kind of look over that. Looks good. Here we go. And then did we forget to paint that ammo can on this one? I think we did. I only remember painting one ammo can. There we go. Pretty cool little shanty town coming along there. Oh man, man, we're so close. Tempted to just wrap it right here. Just do a couple little spots here. I'm going to do this little arrow in red. I'll wait and maybe do that panel in blue and then the skull in white afterwards. I'm going to do this little crash bit of a car right here in red. Leave the edges worn there again. This looks like that's a little piece of the plane right there that's crashed on the other one. So we'll go ahead and do that one. And again, just gonna kind of skip some of the little edges so it looks like they're kind of worn. So we're getting like the reverse uh, edge highlight effect. So by not painting those little bits in between the panels, it'll look like we came back later and kind of did that with the metallic. And then for this part here, I'm going to kind of exaggerate that effect a little bit. What I mean is doing like a little bit of that stippling once again, and then right up against this, I'll do it a little darker, but here I'm just exaggerating the worn away effect. So it looks like the paint is worn off because that would be like the front of a plane. Just put a little spot there and a little spot there. And then just add a little color on the back there. That's like a little crashed plane effect there. And what about on this guy? Any red there? There's a little wing. And again, just kind of like purposefully missing some spots, but then also just, making this technique do the work for us. Because any spots we like accidentally miss just looks like we did on purpose. And then this is our main one, the main bit of the plane here. Don't see any like jerry cans or anything. So just going to do, obviously that's our main effect. So if that's the front of the plane, we want to pay attention to that. And then there's a couple little bits we could come back and do in metal later if we want to. But if you just kind of imagine that the forward velocity of the plane is going to cause whatever's at the front of the plane, including the paint, to wear off the fastest. So the front of the plane, if we're going to leave the paint missing from areas, wherever the front is, should have the most paint missing or the least paint left behind. So we're just kind of picking that front edge and then just leaving the paint off. And then that's going to look like it's kind of worn down and missing. So we're basically doing like a reverse highlight right here is the goal. And then again, where you have like this little ridge right here, we're going to leave a little bit of paint off. And it should give us the effect like that was the front of the plane. And then I'm going to skip the little patches, and then maybe we'll come back with just like a steel or like leadbelcher or something like that and paint those patches in. And again, we've got like a little edge right there. So when we come up on this little edge here, same thing again. I'm just going to kind of leave the paint off and just kind of stipple it a little bit. So it looks like it was intentional. And then this is our final piece in the very front of the plane. So this is, I think, where the most paint would be missing. And then maybe because that tooth is right there, there'd be like a little more paint left behind because it was kind of blocking the airflow. And there we go. So that looks like kind of weathered already. Pretty cool, pretty cool. And then it's up to us whether we want to actually paint this part right here red. I'm going to do it just because it's going to give us a little bit more effect, but I'm not going to worry about like the inside underneath of the plane. But it will help to just kind of catch your eye for a little color on the background, even if you don't realize that's actually the inside of the plane when it draws your eye to it. You know, and it only took us 2 seconds to do so. And then that looks like that's part of the car right there. So we'll paint the car pieces yellow. And I think that'll give us a little extra effect. But so yeah, we got quite a bit done today. That was definitely a nice little session. A little over 2 hours, about 2 hours and 31 minutes. So now we've got about 4 hours and 30 minutes, 4.5 hours on this set right now. And overall, I would say it's looking pretty freaking good. Still a little ways to go. I definitely want to do some like extra depth on some of this stuff. So like some washes over some of the metals and some weathering on the copper. I want to do a little bit of black on some of the wires or maybe blue. And then obviously the blue for the other icons are on the other side. Little OSL on the lights. What else do we talk about? The white for the faces on the little orky bits. But overall, I would say everything is looking pretty darn good right now. Definitely starting to get, like, you know, obviously not fully painted yet, but I think that would be already acceptable to put on the table and play some games on. So if you're new to the channel and you like the video today, make sure that you like and subscribe. We have obviously all kinds of painting, conversion, magnetization, adding lights on to your sets, everything you can imagine. Also show off our completed commissions as they go out of the studio. Obviously, that is how we fund the channel. So if you're ever interested in a commission or anything like that, please reach out to us either here or through the eBay store. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure you share this with your friends or anyone else that might be interested on social media, etc. I am Warhammer Man. This is Warhammer Man Studios, our Ork Shanty Town for Kill Team Octarius. And I'll catch you next time in part 3 when we do our blues and whites and then some of the other detail work as well. And I'm out of here.